Welcome to HeartMend Story. I am a billionaire who owns the skyline, but I just found a secret in a 1940s suitcase that proves my entire empire is built on a shameful lie. Inside this rusted leather box was a soldier's last letter to his unborn daughter. It reveals a truth that should have shattered my world, because the woman who sacrificed everything to save me is tied to the man who destroyed me 20 years ago. But here at HeartMend Story, we believe that even the deepest wounds can be healed. Stick with me until the end, because what I found buried in that old cemetery turned my fury into grace and showed me that true wealth isn't in your bank account, it is in a clean soul. This is a journey from betrayal to redemption. This is my story. The dust in the attic tasted like forgotten time. I knelt on the cold floor of my penthouse. Before me sat a 1940s suitcase. It was a relic of leather and rusted iron. My hands trembled as I pried it open. I was the man who owned the skyline. But inside this box lay the reason I almost lost my soul. 20 years ago, I had nothing but a coat and a hunger that burned. I worked 3 jobs and slept on a floor of cardboard. I was betrayed by the person I trusted most. My business partner took the last of my savings and vanished. I sat on a park bench in the freezing rain. I felt the heavy weight of total failure. I was ready to let the darkness take me. Then, a hand touched my shoulder. It was Sarah. She was a nurse who lived in the basement apartment next to mine. She did not offer me money. She offered me her strength. She told me that a man is not defined by his bank balance. She said a man is defined by what he does when he is broken. For 2 years, she worked double shifts so I could build my dream. She wore shoes with holes in them so I could buy a suit for a meeting. She sacrificed her comfort to fuel my ambition. When I finally became a billionaire, the world saw my wealth. They did not see the nights she held me while I cried in frustration. They did not see the moral compass she gave me. Today, I found this suitcase in an old estate sale. I opened the secret compartment in the lining. I found a yellowed envelope. It was a soldier's last words to his unborn daughter. I began to read the letter aloud. My voice broke as the words hit my heart. The soldier was Sarah's grandfather. He wrote about a secret he had hidden for 80 years. A secret that changed everything I thought I knew about her family. The soldier wrote of a field in France. He wrote of a locket he had buried beneath an oak tree. It was not gold or silver that he hid. It was a map to a truth that could destroy a legacy. I looked at Sarah as she sat across the room. She was stitching a quilt for our own daughter. She did not know I had found the suitcase. She did not know her grandfather was not the hero she loved. The letter spoke of a betrayal in the heat of battle. It spoke of a fortune stolen from a fallen comrade. My hands felt cold as the paper crinkled. I realized the seed of my own empire was tainted. The money Sarah used to support my startup. The inheritance she received when her mother passed. It was all traced back to this leather box. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had built my towers on a foundation of theft. I looked at the marble walls of our home. They felt like a prison of someone else's making. Sarah looked up and smiled at me. Her eyes were full of the same light that saved me. She asked me if I had found anything interesting. I could not speak for a long moment. I tucked the letter into my pocket. I felt the sharp edge of the paper against my skin. It felt like a blade. I had to choose between the truth and our peace. I stood up and walked toward the window. The city lights below looked like fallen stars. I wondered if a man could ever truly be clean. I wondered if Sarah could survive the truth. I stood in the silence of the penthouse. The letter was a heavy weight in my pocket. Sarah stood up and walked toward me. She placed her hand on my arm. She asked why my face was so pale. I looked into her eyes and saw purity. I saw the woman who had sacrificed her youth for my success. I could not tell her that her grandfather was a thief. I could not tell her that our fortune was built on blood money. I told her I only needed some fresh air. I grabbed my coat and left the building. I drove through the city until the lights faded. I found myself at the old cemetery where her family lay. I walked to the grave of the soldier. The headstone was gray and bitten by the wind. I knelt in the dirt and began to dig. My fingers bled against the frozen earth. I did not care about the pain in my hands. I only cared about the truth hidden beneath the roots. My shovel struck something hard and metallic. I pulled a small, rusted iron box from the ground. Inside was the locket the letter had mentioned. I snapped it open with a trembling thumb. There was no gold inside the locket. There was only a photograph and a ring. The photograph showed two men in uniform. One was her grandfather, smiling at the camera. The other man was a stranger with a haunting gaze. On the back of the photo, a name was written. It was the name of the man who had betrayed me 20 years ago. The iron box felt like a block of ice in my hands. The stranger in the photograph had a scar across his brow. It was the same scar I saw on the man who robbed me. 20 years had passed since he took my last penny. I realized then that the betrayal was not a coincidence. It was a debt that spanned 3 generations. The soldier had stolen from the stranger's father. Then the stranger had stolen from me. The vicious cycle of greed had finally come to my door. I looked at the ring inside the box. It was a heavy signet ring with a broken crest. It was the symbol of a family that had lost everything. I felt a surge of fury and confusion. Sarah was the bridge between these two broken worlds. She was the light that had saved a man from the darkness. But she was also the keeper of a secret she did not know. I drove back to the penthouse in a daze. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. I walked through the door and saw Sarah waiting. She was holding the 1940s suitcase on her lap. Her face was wet with tears and her hands shook. She had found the hidden compartment herself. She looked at me with eyes full of shame. She told me she knew why I had left so abruptly. She told me she had found the original deed. The deed to the land where my first factory stood. It was not hers to give to me 20 years ago. It belonged to the man who had destroyed my life. I looked at Sarah, her face bathed in the soft glow of the penthouse lamps. She was ready to give up everything we had built. She offered to return every penny to the man with the scar. I took her hands in mine and felt the calluses from her years of hard work. I realized that vengeance is a fire that only consumes the one who holds it. The man who betrayed me was a prisoner of his own greed. But Sarah was a soul defined by her own sacrifice. I chose to find the man with the scar, not to punish him, but to forgive him. I tracked him to a small, dusty apartment on the edge of the city. He was old, broken, and living in the shadows of his choices. I did not ask for my money back. Instead, I handed him the signet ring from the suitcase. I told him the debt of his father and my father was erased. He wept as he held the silver crest of his ancestors. I walked back to Sarah, feeling a lightness I had never known. We donated the original land to build a sanctuary for those who had lost hope. True success is not measured by the height of a skyscraper. It is measured by the depth of the mercy we show to our enemies. We learned that you cannot fix a broken past by breaking the present. The greatest wealth is a conscience that can sleep in peace. We stood on our balcony, watching the sun rise over a city that felt new. Love had turned a story of theft into a legacy of grace. Our daughter slept in the next room, heir to a fortune built on truth. The suitcase was closed, its secrets finally laid to rest.